You do this as well if I speak like this? Because before I was sort of curled like this. Is this okay? Okay. I keep complaining that I'm always hunched over my computer and I'm turning old and then I come up to read and I'm also... If it's not needed, I won't do it. Okay, so by now, I've published 10 books, if you count the book bundle as 5 separate books, as they are. And 2 longer novels with my bigger publisher, and then this is a little publishing house that I run with my wife. And so my first novel was called Kvíðasnillingarnir, which is a title I really like, and you can't really translate it to English, but it would be something like The Masters of Anxiety. And it's very much a sort of first novel, coming of age story about 3 boys who are also sort of feminine, if you can say that, if there's a difference between boys and girls. I'm not sure there is one. And then the second novel is called Fyrir allra augum. And that's also hard to translate. Translation is very frustrating. And there will be something like In Plain Sight. And that's the story about a guy who falls in love with a young woman, and then he doesn't see her for a year and a half, and the sort of interregnum, he becomes very famous. And as sort of a person he portrays online, and he doesn't really agree with the portrayal online, so it's a sort of reflection or thinking about how we can create different personalities now, and maybe we spend even more energy on creating online personalities than maturing as human beings sometimes. Not that I'm going to start lecturing you, but this is all completely irrelevant to what I'm going to read, because I'm going to read tiny snippets from the book bundle. One story there, a novel of reasonable length. So the idea behind the book bundle is also, I love books, I love physical books. And they're all meant, you can read them in one sitting, and you can keep them in your pocket. And I think that's important to encourage people to carry books, to hold books, and that books look nice, and I think they look nice. And this is all important. And so this novel is called Fallegasta kynslóðin alltaf sú sem kemur næst, which in my dull English translation, which has no color in my mind, it would be the most gifted generation is always the next one. We were a few young people, all around 20, who decided to save the world. And most importantly, everything in the world that we found beautiful. Or maybe not save the whole world, but at least try to save ourselves, or souls. And maybe not save everything in the world that was beautiful, but nearly what we found to be beautiful within us. We wanted to save everything that was beautiful inside us. We also decided to save Icelandic literature. Icelandic literature appeared to be in a very sad state, and we decided to rescue it from dying. Our language was among the oldest languages still spoken in the world, and we were among the youngest people currently alive in the whole universe. We felt as if we were being reborn every time we wrote a line of poetry. Many of us volunteered for charity organizations. Some of us spent nights in psychiatric wards, or woke up screaming after having suffered years in terrible marriages. We cried in libraries and shouted on stages in half-empty bars. The sun was never bright enough for us, the nights never long enough. Some of us died before the age of 30. Most of the others ended up securing steady 9-to-5 jobs. None of her poems have survived. I remember well the time when I first read The Most Gifted Generation is Always the Next One. It happened, as so many other good things in those days, in Augusta Rose's bedroom. Augusta Rose is a female name, that's not clear. Augusta Rose and I weren't exactly an item. We were sexual partners, we were a writing duo, and we were soulmates. What is this? I asked, and pulled The Most Gifted Generation is Always the Next One out from under a stack of poetry books standing by the bedside. I was lying on my stomach, naked, and I had to extend my arms so far to reach the book that I almost fell out of the bed. Augusta Rose glanced over my shoulder. No, it's just a book of poetry. I found it at my dad's. I haven't read it yet. The cover is incredibly beautiful. Yes, that's exactly why I borrowed it. The cover is so beautiful. I read the book that very same day, and my whole life changed. I guess you could even say that it was then that my life really first started. No one should be surprised that Augusta Rose had such a strong influence on my life. She could read fluently in 7 languages: Icelandic, English, Danish, Swedish, French, Spanish, and German. And she could read for fun in 3 more languages: Faroese, Italian, Norwegian. So wasn't it very understandable that the book-loving youngsters of Reykjavik should not only send her envious looks, but also seek advice from her? Anyway, Augusta Rose was a tough cookie, and in those days we felt as if we were invincible. We read on the bus, and in the classroom, and in bakeries. We read in nightclubs, and on stoops, and in public parks, right after sex, and more often than not, also right before sex. We read on airplanes, and in cars, and coffee shops, and sitting by the harbor, dangling our legs over the water. We read books, and magazines, and websites, and newspapers, and traffic signs, and graffiti. Anything written, we devoured. When I recall those days, I struggle to picture an hour where Augusta Rose and I didn't read something. We read our books while sunbathing on the mountain slope after a long hike, or in the shower after gymnastics class. We read our journals in the living room at home while our parents dumbly stared at the TV news. And we read science fiction on the balcony while the sun sunk down the horizon. We read old Celtic poetry of the Middle Ages and the ingredient descriptions on jars of rhubarb jam. Sometimes it was too cold to read on the playground swings, and then we crawled into bed with our tiny reading lamps so that we could keep reading till morning, when we exited the house yawning, holding steaming hot coffee in our thermos cups, and kept reading Victorian novels sitting in the bus shelter, already way too late for school. Sometimes it even happened that we read while having sex. Then we read whole novels while staring into each other's eyes. And in a certain sense, those were the best reading moments Augusta Rose and I ever shared. Reading while staring into each other's eyes. Do I have time to do a tiny piece more, or?
Yes. More.
Can you tolerate me for a few more minutes? So then I'll read a little bit from a new novel that I'm at least pretending to work on. I'm pretending that I'm working on it. We're trying to work on it. So here it is. And that one is called, the working title is Goðsögnin Gulltunguna, eða síðasta íslenska skáldsaga, which would be The Legend of the Golden Tongue, or the last Icelandic novel. And so the plot sort of is centered around a myth that speaks of a golden tongue that was made around the time people settled Iceland. And so the golden tongue is sort of directly connected with all intellectual activities of Icelandic nations from the heyday till now. And if you put it in your mouth, you'll speak and think. You'll be connected to all Icelandic thought, and you'll speak beautifully. So I'm not at all worried about the language dying, right? Subconsciously, these ideas keep coming to me. And this is a scene where the main character sees the main male character sees the main female character for the first time. And it's set in New York. In Icelandic, water is vatn. What? You have what word for that? April 17th, 2017, and we picture a typical subway car in New York City. Nothing works as it should. The electric notice board is not functioning. Everyone looks tired and sick, either drunk or dazed from heavy anxiety medication. Over the windows hang colorful ads from the Museum of Sex. An old homeless man coughs with regular intervals over the screeching train sounds. He's lying there in a corner on a bed of plastic bags. The general mood shows that the United States of America is a dying empire. Styrmir P. Noason, raised in Blönduós, Iceland, now living in Brooklyn, is among the passengers. He is one of the few people reading a paperback novel, an Icelandic translation from the Danish of a novel by William Heinesen, the Faroese writer who declined the Nobel Prize, as he would, or so he claimed, only spent the award money on booze, if he ever got it, and thus never get any more writing done. Styrmir briefly glances up from the book. A young woman who is wearing a red beret over her blonde hair with something Asian to her face has caught his attention. She looks rather shy, but sometimes we need to overcome personal and psychological obstacles in order to save the world. Dear passengers on the sea line of the financially starved New York City subway system, the young woman shouts, standing in the middle of the crowd. I have an urgent announcement for you all. The train is packed to bursting with passengers, and yet we all act as if we were alone in the world. No one has said a single word for more than 10 minutes. Have none of us anything to say anymore to our fellow citizens? People desperately try to push further away from her. Palms slip on greasy poles, backpacks strike noses, cables get entangled with scarves and earrings, heels trample on toes, curses take flight. The young woman, however, is not about to let anything prevent her from delivering her speech. The current social structure confines us to a prison of dissatisfaction and loneliness. You look miserable and sad. Most of you grind at meaningless jobs from morning till night, only to scrape together enough money to pay for food and rent. I can understand that you are weary and tired, but comfort is not to be found on your screen, but in the eyes of others. You'll never be happy as long as you're so entranced by mass-produced entertainment. Dear passengers, I urge you to turn off your devices. They are not connecting you, but rather keeping you separated from the world. Rather, you should look around you. I read about a research paper that states that what prolongs human lives and produces happiness more than eating carrots and going to the gym is random interactions with strangers. Be part of the world around you. Maybe you're sitting next to a future lover. Human intimacy. Enhance the receiving conditions of the senses. If one of you wants a hug or simply a short but insightful chat about literature or music, here I am, a willing volunteer, all free of charge. She receives no response from the crowd. Styrmir, still glancing over his book, has decided that he wants to marry this woman. A bald giant who looks like he'd kill a rhinoceros with a flick of his fingers clears enormous quantities of mucus from his throat. His Adam's apple quivers as he swallows the fleck. Roughly estimated, only 13% of the passengers are fully conscious of their surroundings. The rest is under the influence of entertainment and or medication and drugs. Among the mentally present is Styrmir, enraptured by the speech. Yes, fellow New Yorkers, the woman shouts. Most of you are wearing headphones that isolate you from your surroundings and staring at the same electric box from the same giant corporation. But here I am, a real human being with a strong Icelandic accent and a rich inner life. And my goal is not to sweep up your attention for ad revenue, but only to promote love, warmth, and empathy. More passengers slip user-friendly headphones into their ears, take shelter behind electric shields, fingers eagerly press play on popular podcasts and R&B hits, eyes escape into the latest comedy special by an adorable celebrity. A few passengers discreetly finger their switchblades and guns. Remember, this is North America after all. You need to be able to protect yourself from unpredictable individuals like this bashful young woman. It's the Second Amendment. Dear passengers, we're living through a geological state of emergency, the sixth extinction, the young woman howls. We're killing everything by being short-sighted, selfish, and monstrous. The Industrial Revolution sacrificed animal life, nature, clean water. Let's not have it happen that the digital revolution sacrifices our inner lives. Corporations have reduced us to organisms that do little else than fiddle with the same addictive devices from morning till night. Do you find that okay, or just going to give up? I want to suggest something. We, the citizens of New York, form the city, and only us can save it from the intellectual and cultural decline that is currently debasing it. Start a conversation with a stranger. Draw with a pencil and paper what you see when you leave the train. Listen to the soundtrack of life everywhere, birds chirping and rubber soles squeaking and little children, still too young and enthusiastic for life to succumb to technology. Why is it? Write a letter to your grandfather. He's dying to hear from you. Look the counter girl in the coffee shop straight in the eye when you order your almond milk coffee and your gluten-free weekend scone. And then, who knows, maybe one day you'll live together in a cute little house in Connecticut. Yes, dear passengers, I love you all. And you can't cultivate real love through an electric cable. I know I'm being very forthcoming, but I'm simply worried by where we're all headed. Well, it seems that we're approaching my stop at Canal Street. Sadly, I must go. I'm a photography model. It's a profession I've come to loathe, and I have a shot scheduled at 10 o'clock sharp. The young woman creates a short, artful pause. Sverrir is the only passenger still listening to her speech. Never give up, she says. Never stop being human. Bye-bye. They briefly look each other in the eye just before the girl hurries out of the train, flushed with emotion, but obviously feeling very proud of her achievement. People lean away from her as if she's infested with lice. And then the sea train takes off again with a deafening noise, so loud it's as if the whole world is collapsing. The girl disappears in the crowd, and Styrmir is soon hurled into a dark tunnel. Thanks.